we've got to start off with Mo Salah. Now, I've been like crazy busy, so I haven't had a chance to sit down and do like my video on Mo Salah. So now's the kind of first proper chance for me to like try and articulate how I feel about it. But I had like new information as I was on the train here, because Mo Salah's have you just seen his post on Instagram?
The gym one.
Yeah.
No,
so
it was like a classic, like, obviously the squad's gone off to Inter. It was like him sat on one of the machines, just like a little selfie in the mirror at the back, with the training ground in the background on his own. Just
grinding.
Yeah.
Just grinding. And anyway, I sort of flip-flopped on this in my head, because what's really weird when you have a channel and you get to talk about these things is if you give yourself a bit more time to think about it. Definitely someone like myself, like I flip-flop on well, I can see how Salah feels and I can see how the club feels. I'm interested to see how Liverpool fans react to this, because I think inevitably you sort of have to go with your club because you have to continue to follow your club, but also you're allowed to have an opinion at the same time, I guess. But that post for me, like, tipped me over the edge from a misguided decision based on the lens that Mo Salah has, and what feels like to me as the inability to not stay away from the attention. Yeah. There is a desire there. Mm-hmm. There's absolutely no need to post that. And I know it's a simple little thing, but in 2025, nearly 2026, those Instagram posts, when you have that kind of following and influence, that is going to cause a stir. And his inability, for someone who himself, in the comments that he's made, which were wholeheartedly premeditated, in my opinion, well, obviously, because those have been two occasions that he's done that. Initially, when he's done it, I'm trying to think of it from his point of view, and I'm thinking he will be going to, his significant people and going, "Am I crazy? I swear I've just won the league basically for this team. I've had all these assists. I've had one of the greatest seasons of all time. Like, am I crazy?" And the people around him naturally will probably go, "You're not crazy." And he's not crazy. But football's such a strange and interesting game in the sense of, regardless of your status, that can erode like that. And I watched this video on the way here, and I thought it was really interesting. And he was talking about people of influence, right? So you have 3 different sections. You have sort of newbies, right? So in any industry, you'll have these kind of newbies, right? So to put this into a football context, you have those youngsters who have just come through the door and they are just like, wow, I'm just buzzing to be here. If you stick around long enough and you're good enough, you become a worker. And workers you can have a great career as a worker, but you're never going to be those key people of influence, right? Those key people of influence, the money follows those people. So the newbies, they're just happy to be there. The workers get a set wage and they're kind of happy. And let's be honest, like, money does make the world go around a little bit. And then you get those few guys at the top. And if they're that good, the money, the fame, the plaudits, absolutely everything comes to them. And every club has those players at different times. Some clubs have got more workers than those top guys. But if you think of, Mbappe and Messi and all those guys, they are in that area, right? What I think is so interesting about football is that in business, let's say, most businesses, you can generally probably stay in that space. But because football is about your legs and your output, you can get dragged back into that worker zone. And I think this is the disconnect here and the problem. And this is why Salah has essentially, this is probably a bit too hot, but like, he's blown up his legacy a little bit.
Yeah.
By doubling down in that need for attention. This feels like Ronaldo.
It is Ronaldo.
Yeah. It's
and again, Ronaldo back in the day, a couple of years ago, he was scoring goals. So again, in his mind, as a guy who's been an utter superstar, like Salah has been for so long, he's thinking, hang on, I thought the sun shines out my arse here. I don't understand what's going on here. But in football, because there is that element of meritocracy in it, regardless of the amount of money that you're making or the influence that you've had, if you aren't delivering, you go back into that worker slot. Yeah. And if you are but if you're back in that worker zone, but you've got the brain and the mindset of one of those key influential people where everything has come your way, I think it's so hard to go back down and be a worker again.
Yeah.
And that is why, for me, this is over. It's over for Salah at Liverpool.
Yeah, he's gone.
It's done, isn't it?
He's gone. Yeah.
Because he's doubling down as well, and he cannot help himself. Because the other thing that was really interesting in his video was that he was talking about if you want to be one of those people, you need to be able to. One thing that's really important, you need to be able to pitch, right? And the idea of pitching is you need to be able to kind of sell the situation you want and what you are. And again, to go back to that interview, that's not a pitch. What he's pitched there is negativity. He could have gone and done that interview and gone, I'm gutted. I'm absolutely gutted. But don't worry, I'm going to be back in that team. When I get in that team, I'm going to score goals for this team because I love this club and I'm not finished yet. He could have done that.
Mm-hmm.
But within 7 days, he's gone the completely different route. And I wanted to find empathy for him because of what he's done. But again, I think that's a problem that will happen again and again and again in football, because a player goes from this to this to this, and then they get dragged back down. And I think that's what's happened here.
Yeah, I think so. It's the classic last big contract in your 30s as well. We've seen it with Ronaldo and Ozil at Arsenal. It was quite a similar situation as well, wasn't it?
Maybe Aubameyang a little bit, although he's still going.
Yeah, and maybe not as high profile as the likes of Salah and Ronaldo, who are that upper echelon of superstar. But I think you're right. The Instagram post today. If I was a Liverpool fan and it's very hard to put yourselves in the shoes of Liverpool fans who will naturally back Salah because of what he's done. He's delivered them 2 league titles and all those kind of things. But I think what Carragher was trying to say last night was that it wasn't just you. And I think people misconstrued his point about AFCON and Chelsea, where they felt a little bit like personal kind of jibes.
Yeah.
But I think what his kind of point was to say that it's you weren't the only reason that we won at Liverpool. It wasn't just all down to you. There was so many other kind of cogs that made it work. You haven't shown the minerals essentially at other sides to be the sole reason that those teams get over the line. I think that's what he was trying to say, but it felt where he came at it with so much pent up frustration. I think that's why it felt so personal.
So do we think Carragher did well or did bad?
I think he did well.
I think he did well.
I think he spoke for a fan base. I know if
Dave Jones threw him under the bus a little bit, didn't he?
No, but
Have I ever?
That was so
you did
good.
say his legs are gone to go.
But also, I think Carragher was right. That's not a criticism, is it? Really, to say his legs have gone. That's just I
think it is.
Well, it is in a way, but it's also something that, Carragher said, it kind of happens to everybody. It's not like he said what's happened to his finishing, what's happened to this, that. It was that's just kind of naturally part of the cycle. It's not a nice thing to hear, especially when we can't put ourselves in the positions of having the ego of a professional footballer.
Yeah.
So obviously for Salah that wouldn't be nice to hear, and you take that as criticism. But I don't think him saying that is that bad. I think he if he'd have criticised parts of his game and or either his work rate or his finishing ability or something, then I think that is a criticism. But I'm not sure if that's enough to get really upset by that.
I also think that with Salah in that sense, when you look at what he actually said, that's not a leader in the team speaking for the rest of the dressing room. That's a man speaking for himself. And like you were saying before, football is a what have you done for me lately kind of sport. And the way he's set up his career, which has been a jibe at him in terms of if he's not scoring or assisting, what is he doing?
Yeah.
You're not scoring or assisting, the team's not winning. And unfortunately, in certain instances, whether that's through personal issues with the manager or he wants to try something different, you're the sacrificial lamb that's going to sit on the bench for a few games. People compare it to Ronaldo, but if you actually watch the interview with Piers Morgan that he had before his exit at Manchester United, a lot of it was personal in terms of stemming back from pre-season and the lack of compassion to his own personal situation at home at the time that developed that disconnect between the two, and then stuff like Ten Hag trying to bring him on with a minute left in the game, which was, you can say a manager can bring on a player whenever he wants. It's a bit disrespectful.
Yeah.
So in my head, I do flip-flop in terms of I see where Salah's coming from. You've done what you've done for Liverpool. We get that. But where you are right now and what you've been doing, would you really feel like it's the time or place to fight for your space in the starting? Okay, I want to be the guy in the starting 11 when the team's not scoring or not winning, rather than, do you know what, as a group, we need to get better. Because the better version of that type of interviews, Curtis Jones the other day.
Yeah.
I know Carragher criticised him for it, but it was like, we all need to work harder. We all need to do better as a team. And where Salah's just going, well, the club's threw me under the bus. I've been disrespected.
Yeah.
I've been hard done by. But you've had ample opportunity to score and play. And I understand Florian Wirtz has had opportunities and other players
He's
have
also
had opportunities.
Wirtz has also had opportunities to sit on the bench.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the thing I find quite revealing, if I'm honest, for someone who I think over the years we've felt is maybe quite quiet, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't talk a lot. This is why but when he does, that's why I use the word like blown up his legacy a little bit, because these comments are so explosive, and again, it's the fact that it's such a short period of time. There's a real different choice that he could have made here that highlights a different personality, a set of personality traits that probably have made him as good as he's been.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, like you say, this is something that for a long time there's been some of these elements like hiding in the background, like the Mane and Salah like relationship was, you could tell that there was something in there where Mane was just, he would make that run and make that run and make that run. And whereas Salah, it has been about him, and that's okay as long as it's working. But I the sort of superstardom of him, I think, has just revealed itself like pretty massively. One thing I will say, I think different players are different, and if you're going to drop Salah for one game, then I don't think you need a conversation there. And this is one thing that I find quite confusing about squads and teams, especially first team players. If it's a first team player, there should be a very clear conversation with the coaching staff and ultimately the manager, because it's a story, right? When certain people are going to get dropped. So I think you need to have that communication. So if Salah is correct in what he's saying, which it feels like it is from the Slot press conference, Slot has dropped him and said it's rotation. And if it is rotation, if you're saying that, you have to play him in one of the next two games. Have to.
But what was the first game he got dropped?
So West Ham, he got dropped.
West Ham.
Yeah.
So they won.
They won. They won. Yeah.
They won.
Yeah.
Like, they needed a win.
They needed a win. They were conceding way too many goals.
Exactly.
And then it was Sunderland.
And there's an element of that where it's like, Salah, you've gone out and openly said, and like basically highlighted the fact that you don't defend. So it's like, if the manager makes a change and you keep a clean sheet, subconsciously to everyone that's watching goes, well, Salah's not on the pitch. Someone else was working harder, and they got a result. So then you can't play the next game, unfortunately, because you shouldn't really change the winning team.
But
I feel like
home, I think there's a much easier route here. Like, and hindsight's 2020, but I think you could. First of all, you can go. Yes, you beat West Ham. West Ham, first of all, atrocious, but they were big side, right? The next game is at home. I think you can play Salah in that one. And then maybe it Leeds, a really hard-working Leeds team at Leeds.
Yep.
Maybe you want to be a little bit more careful.
But it's home against Sunderland, though.
Yeah.
And Sunderland...
But Sunderland have been tricky this year.
Well, exactly. So is bringing Salah back in for that one. Is that
but I think when you're at home, you've got to go and beat... You should be going and beating the opposition.
True, but I also think there's been elements of certain games. I think we all remember the Brentford game where Liverpool got battered up there, and Salah in that game was really struggling to take on his fullback. Looked so poor in that aspect. And that's something that people have kind of held against him for a while, that he's not the greatest 1v1. Although I think he's declined in that aspect. I think he used to be pretty decent at taking on his man. But like that game against a team that they were trying to chase that game to get back into it against Brentford, and he could not get anything against that fullback.
But I think he's been isolated on that side.
Yeah,
whereas
a little
bit. If you think
I think it's where maybe Mrs. Trent as well, to kind of back him up and come behind him and offer an option to cross the ball into the box.
Luis Diaz as a centre forward, Jota as well at times, even Nunez as well. Some Bosley too as well, like, is on that right side. If you think of if you kind of because we're losers, and if I can say that, and I'm able to close my eyes and I can see the average positions of Liverpool last season, right? And it looks like it's like a blob, and then there's an arrow in the corner where Salah is, right?
Yeah.
But the play is also kind of working its way that way, right? So when that happens and he does get the ball 1-on-1, I would describe Salah's dribbling as like really good scurrying.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Reacting to the ball.
Yeah. So, but when there's lots of players knocking about in that area, I think you can go boop, 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 and there's so much going on. He's got that great wriggle about him.
Yeah,
that he was able to create good stuff. Right. This year, I think because everyone's over on the left-hand side. When he has got it out there, in principle, it feels like, oh, that's the same. But I think if you're a fullback, you go, I'm not worried about someone bombing on around me. I'm not worried about anyone close to me. I am just focusing on stopping you, Mohamed Salah. And I think that has made that a much easier task.
I feel like, at least from watching like the earlier games this season, that they'd sort of like flipped everything. So like the same way you're kind of saying everyone's on the left. It used to feel like Liverpool play, Salah's the out ball, and then everything will go there. But now, especially early, you see like the amount of chances Gakpo had and probably wasted.
Well, Ekitike just that side as
yeah,
well,
and
yeah.
it would finish on that side.
Yeah.
Meaning that, I don't know the statistics. I'm sure someone has them. But I would have assumed Salah's had a lot less shots and shot creating actions this season versus at this point versus last season.
But he's got the same amount of touches, which again kind of
moves
moves
to isn't that the
point.
most in the Premier League as well? Like touches in the attacking third.
But then that stat is like, yeah, you're going to give Salah the ball, but if you're not giving him a position,
yeah, exactly.
Because like you said, he's not the greatest 1v1 now and stuff. So it could be a thing of, okay, give it to Salah. I can't get round him. Okay, let's recycle it and move it again.
Teams
so
are quite happy for the ball to be funneled to Salah when they're playing against a team that's sat slightly deeper, so often.
Yeah, because also I guess if you win it, then you break. He's not coming back.
Exactly.
That's the thing. And
I mean, that was like Carragher yesterday saying you've thrown your right back under the bus for 8 years. It's just like I think there's an interesting thing with the what you were saying at the start about the worker, that evolution kind of into that upper echelon, which is reserved for only a few people. I think Carragher gets underrated a little bit for his time at Liverpool because he was there for so long, and I think people look back at him now, and he gets a lot of like stick from Liverpool fans sometimes where maybe he's criticising other top players and saying, well, you were nothing like special necessarily, but you were part of the furniture. And I think there's an interesting thing in that dynamic of Carragher being the worker, so selfless at Liverpool for so long, who was a big face of the club, but never was like it's a bit like Neville at Man United, isn't he? Like, I know Neville probably again is another player that's underrated, but like quite happy to just be an important cog in the system, but knew what it meant to work hard and play for the badge and all those kind of things. So I think where he's come at him from that point of view, I think that's quite interesting. That sort of dynamic you were talking about at the start, like.
I think it's interesting what you're saying because like the famous chant, especially I want to say it was after Istanbul, was like, we want 11 Jamie Carragher's on the pitch.
Yeah.
He embodied what I guess the Liverpool mentality and the workman-like culture of the city and all this stuff.
He
so
just got it.
When he sees a Salah moving the way he's moving, it's not because I don't think it's because he's jealous of his ability. I don't think it's because he never got to reach that elite stardom of being a player. Like, this is a man that grew up literally side by side with Steven Gerrard.
Yeah,
he was always going to be in that shadow.
That last
so
night,
he doesn't
didn't he?
care
He was
about
like, I've seen Gerrard at the end. I've seen John Barnes at the end. All these kind of players. It's like they never stop doing what Salah's doing right now. So it's like,
that's why I wanted to bring it up because I think it's about having an acceptance for your position.
Yeah.
Both on the pitch, but in terms of status as well. And I think that was telling that he brought up that point as well. And I think there is a fine line and a balance between it all, right? Because for you to feel valuable within a squad, you have to evolve, right? So Gerrard, there was a nice balance there where he was playing those beautiful passes and assisting somewhat, but you had Henderson to do his running, and he was still the captain.
Yeah.
Same with John Barnes, who'd like lost that sort of pace, so had to kind of become a different player. So the sort of selflessness becomes something that provides you with that bit of status. Salah doesn't have that, so that's why I'm certain. I need to find the clip. I swear I said this to Doogie. I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if we got to a point where people were calling for Salah because things are moving on, and I don't think. Just Salah is not the kind of guy. I don't think his leadership is your usual selfless leadership. No. It's I'll go and score the goals for you.
Yeah.
So if you can't offer that, then you find yourself in quite an awkward kind of predicament.
Which is the criticism that, like you said earlier, that people have kind of labelled at Salah for a long time. If he's not scoring, he's not really offering that much else to the team. I found it quite interesting, and people might have missed it because all of the explosive stuff came before the game and Carragher's rant and stuff, but after the game, they were talking to James Maddison about his career and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, James Maddison out injured with an ACL at the moment. He was talking about his attitude of like, I'm so desperate to prove myself to Thomas Frank when I come back, and that's what grinds me on every single day. And just talking about that desperation and always having something to prove. And Carragher said he was the same at Liverpool. It was like every single day. If you're a footballer that feels like they haven't got something to prove to anyone, what are you here? That's really dangerous. What are you here for? And it was like that. I think is his beef, isn't it, with Salah? Because that was a direct quote from Salah, wasn't it? It was like I almost essentially feel like I don't have to prove anything to Arne Slot. I've done what I've done. And it was like, that's not, you can't say that. You literally you cannot say that.
Yeah, and that's a great phrase to say in all of this whole saga is he shouldn't be saying anything. But the thing I would come back to is that Salah is not your normal footballer, right?
No.
And we've seen these glimpses of how he views himself. And that is the sort of, that feeling about yourself is the stardust that will get the wins and the assists and the goals, right? And we've all been in those teams where you go like, you got that guy, that's that guy, and you go, well, let him be that guy because it's serving all of us. For Arne Slot to not have sat him down and gone, look, mate, we know who you are, we know what you mean to this club, right? But I need to stop I need to get us to stop conceding goals. And we're going to talk about Villa. I think Villa's a really good example, right? Because Villa are now all of a sudden buzzing and confident. They were not. And so between then and now, you have to sort of find a way to kind of get a foothold in life and or in games, right? Let's just win. Let's just stop conceding. Let's stand up again. Let's crawl, then stand, then walk, then run. And I think this is why Salah's made such a huge mistake. If he truly, truly wanted to fulfill these next 2 years, and let's remember, like 4 months ago, I'm going, this guy's another 2 years like he's just had. Like you'd struggle to argue his record against an Henry because he would have the longevity and the numbers. Obviously, there's eye tests in there, and you know what I mean. But for him to explode so quickly is so stupid. But I do feel like Slot should have sat him down and gone, look, give me 3-4 games. You've got AFCON as well. Once you come back, we're going to have this team in a better place that's going to allow us to platform and control games, be at the other end of the pitch, figure out this out defensively, and then we'll want you back in.
I don't think he can, though. And I think that's why he's done it. I think there's a
Salah
part of
knows
it.
that.
Yeah.
But I also think that there's an element where it's a big risk. But the club is not. I think, bro, if say for example after this they say, right, he's done what he's done, he's gone, like in Jan we'll get rid of him.
Yeah.
But there's a very real scenario where neither of them are at the club by next season, and it's not because because you brought up Villa, right? And I rate Villa because of the manager they have on the touchline.
Yeah.
Emery, as much as the only blight on his record really is like Arsenal, and that was a rebuilding Arsenal.
And there's
but
context there.
the rest of his career, he's won. He's played with. He's managed top players. He's managed to figure it out, and he's getting the best out of a bad situation. For me, I've even said since last season, I feel like it was a lot of remnants of what Klopp left behind that he picked up from, and I shouldn't say should have won the league. Arsenal had injuries and whatnot, but it was. I feel like it was a simple situation to go into at that time with the players you had. That's why they could go last summer without signing anyone, and still have a squad to win the league. Now, I feel like this is the first test of his actual management, not just tactically, squad management. Because, for example, I look at it and say they're struggling in all areas of the pitch, right? And early in the season, Newcastle away, Rinamoa, 17 years old, comes on and scores. Where's he been since?
Yeah.
All these. He's not bedding in new players. Ekatike started off hot. Now Isak needs to get minutes. You're just dropping him out of nowhere. Like, I look at this team and say, who's it serving to benefit? So there's Salah you got to think about. Then there's Isak you got to think about. Then Wirtz. He can't think of all those things at once. And because they're all brought in with the status that they've all got superstar privileges that I don't think him as a mad manager can provide to all of them, and if he tries to appease all of them, he'll appease none of them and ostracize others.
Yeah. Do you think the just on that, the Jacob Murphy comments that Arne Slot made the other day, where he was talking about Isak? Did you see that?
No.
Where he basically said in an interview about, I think it was in the press conference pre-Leeds, and I can't remember what he was asked, but it was kind of along the lines of like, what do you think it's going to take for Isak to kind of hit the ground running at Liverpool? Scored last weekend against West Ham, obviously. And he said essentially one of the problems is we don't have a Jacob Murphy in our team, like that kind of. And I think that, if you're Salah reading that, I think what he meant is obviously the profile, someone that's a lot more sacrificial and works. And I think that's almost a bit of a nail in the coffin to say that's why you're not in the team at the moment. That's why we can't serve. And this is the thing, like you said, in terms of Slot, we haven't really necessarily seen him display the minerals yet to kind of deal with all these egos and like picked up what Klopp was picked up off of Klopp, what Klopp was doing last season, etc. When things go difficult, how do you manage that kind of situation? And I think he's just asking for a bit of work. He's asking for people to
I don't
grind
think it was
and, like,
that. I don't think it was a work thing though. I think it was. If it's the real jibe, it's someone who's actually going to pass Isak the ball.
Yeah, that's
on
also
time
true.
and in rhythm.
That's
because
also true.
And I
Also,
mean,
like what you
someone
said about-
subservient, right?
Yeah.
And also that kind of links to what Carragher said last night about the Wirtz thing, about that chance at Frankfurt, about like
He's been sitting on that for a while.
Yeah, I know. You could tell.
Clearly.
And this was the whole
You're like,
funny
his
thing
face
about
changed.
Yeah, and that was the whole funny thing about Carragher last night. It was like that was him with 2 days of him just like simmering down. And it was like all just led up to this. But I think that's also part of it as well. Someone that will just not just be selfless in terms of their work rate, but also being the provider for others, and that being your kind of sole responsibility.
And that's what made Klopp's team great. Right?
Yeah.
Klopp had
Firmino.
He had these star players who had like worker mindsets.
Yeah,
right.
Mane and Firmino.
And I think you've lost one too many workers, and you've brought in one too many.
Well, this is
stars.
But I look at it and say, like, your 2 biggest signings, Isak and Wirtz, right? Wirtz is a player as much as I feel like not a lot of people really watched him before he came to the Premier League. But if you watch him for Leverkusen, he's trying to link up and get 1-2s going.
But he's the guy, isn't he?
And he was the guy. But I'm looking at watching Liverpool go, right, as soon as you give it to that front three, you're not getting that ball back. They're trying to shoot. They just want to shoot. Like,
Gakpo is a bad offender for that. And I think that's where Liverpool fans have also sided with Salah in the sense of like, he's not the only one that's performing badly. And I think that's maybe where they feel a bit of sympathy for him. There's obviously other areas.
But the rest of them are keeping their mouth shut.
Yeah, that's true. And it was telling that Alisson came out as well and kind of backed Slot over Salah and said, look, you can't do what he did and all those kind of things. But also, they've shot themselves in the foot in the sense that Konate is obviously a massive talking point at the moment, but they don't have the depth to be able to make that change when Konate has arguably been performing worse than anybody in that team all season.
I think Van Dijk's been just as bad.
Van Dijk started well.
Not just as bad. Konate's been horrific.
Konate's been worse, I think.
I'm not saying he's bad. He's in bad form. He is in such... The slight... What is he doing for that?
Don't get twisted. Konate does rash and like bad things, right? But you've also got like his role as the centre back is to go and do these things, and he's getting it wrong. Van Dijk is meant to be essentially the sweeper, the controller of the back four, and he's controlling nothing. And now in the state that Liverpool are in, you kind of have to go and engage because of the situations you open yourself up to, and he's still refusing to almost protect. I don't know, not to protect himself or it's his style, but
I don't think he's ever been that guy. Though. Has he? I don't think he's ever been. He's always. Everyone used to love it when he would like stare at people. Like now, it's like, you're struggling.
Yeah, but your stare's not effective, and like there was an element of
aura's gone.
I feel like there was an element of like if a forward comes up against Van Dijk in a 1v1 situation, like their brain just melts.
Was it
like,
Lautaro Martinez? Do you remember that?
Yeah,
and remember that? He just went nah.
The Moussa Sissoko one, Spurs as well, where he's running through at Anfield, and Van Dijk's just like, yeah, go on, you can just run.
You shoot.
I'm going to block Son off. You can shoot. Yeah, he's like, he's lost.
I don't know, man.
I
think Van Dijk's got better bits around him. I think he's in a much better.
Also, Van Dijk, like the start of the season, he was probably one of the only reasons why they won those, where they were getting away with it at the start. He did hold that back line together. His form has dropped off a cliff, but I think he started well.
But I think this is you got to look at the touchline. You can't tell me this, like, football, we like to overcomplicate and look at too many different angles. When I look at a team and I see this many players playing bad at the same time, something is going wrong at the training ground. Yeah. And whether it's morale, whether it's the setup, you're killing too many players.
Do you know what it feels like a lot? It feels like there's been so many times where you've had a manager that had a lot of good about him and he left, and a new manager comes who's different, well, inevitably, but you still you have the remnants of that or what was good there, and so you can add a little spice to it, and then it's quite a nice meal. But the season after that, it goes off. And so you need to like find a new way of dishing something up that's going to work, right? And I do feel like same with Salah as well. Like if you think of a Klopp team that is, because it's a really clever way to make attackers defend by having that high press and that high energy. Because you go, well, we're up here already, and if we can win the ball, then the goal's only there. And I think that you always had that with Klopp sides. What was nice last year was that because it was all about Salah, you still had your workers, you still had Luis Diaz in there, supposedly like surrounding him. You had quite a clever, again, if we're thinking about the status of a player, a fullback in Trent with the world-class elements that he has, he's still a fullback. So he's still not going to be that guy who's just going to walk. Yeah. So you've kind of got that as well. And so it all worked, but it's just gone so far afield from that with the recruitment. That Slot he thought it was going to be like Harlem Globetrotters, but it's just not.
I think what you said about the remnants as well, though, it's like, I can compare it to like Chelsea with like Mourinho. So he built that core of like Cech, Terry, Lampard, Drogba. Obviously, you can add Ashley Cole and these guys. It didn't really matter which manager came in. Like, Chelsea got to a Champions League final with Avram Grant on the touchline, won the Champions League with Di Matteo on the touchline. It didn't really matter because the players had picked up whatever they had from that great manager and carried it forward as a mentality, and to the detriment of certain players, even Salah when he came to the club and De Bruyne, like, they were so aggressive in their mindset of this is how we do things. That
there's sustainability in that ruthlessness, though, isn't there?
Yeah. And I'd say, like, with the issue with Klopp, they dismantled so much of that core in terms of, like, Trent's gone now, Robbo's on the bench, Alisson's injury prone, Henderson's gone. So obviously Jota unfortunately passed away. So, like, you've literally only got Van Dijk and Salah as the only two that were part of that, like, Klopp DNA. Yeah. So it's, I think you need to find a new identity, because I guess them two aren't going to be there much longer. No, and then where do Liverpool go from there? Because you don't have anyone to carry that mentality forward.
And that's why, again, the Slot thing and him not having a chat with him, I just feel like there's been a private discussion here and going, I think we need to move this on.
Yeah.
And so he's done it in a way that I think is disappointing if that is the case. And I'm just reading off like what I'm kind of seeing, and he's talking about how he's not had a chat with him, and I don't know, maybe it's just, if it was me, if you hear that, I think I would go, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. I would have that, like, you'd want to have that conversation.
Yeah, come on, help me out here.
Maybe, obviously I don't know what those dressing room environments are like, and there's a lot of like alpha males that actually behave quite childishly, like a lot of the time, because there are so many. There's just so many men knocking about.
Who's going to tell him though? There's no one in the, like. There's no.
There's a lot of
there's only Van Dijk and Alisson that could probably tell him.
Yeah, but and Van Dijk's backed him as well. Like, Van Dijk kind of backed him, didn't he? Well, Alisson didn't, but
Van Dijk's backed Salah.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So it's like, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it wasn't like he wasn't holding him to account necessarily about it. And I think as well, like what you were saying about those old Chelsea teams and having that really strong core and that spine of the team as well, and how that seeps into the mentality. One thing that's been so noticeable about Liverpool this season is when any single thing has gone against them in a game, whether the momentum shifts or they concede a goal, or like that the Van Dijk equaliser at the Etihad where it was offside, which was very unlucky, and I think it was the wrong decision to this day, but like how quickly then they go and concede a goal after that, how vulnerable they are in moments that have gone against them, and how quickly, against Leeds you saw it as well, the momentum can shift in games. And that does speak to, I think, the mentality of the group and the focus of the group at the moment. With, all right, they've had some elements of that leadership structure and players who are such a big part mentality-wise under Klopp, etc., and that first season under Arne Slot. But there's still a lot of strong characters in there that just need to get a grip of themselves, I think, a bit as well. Like, it's just, like, how quickly the momentum shifts in these games against Liverpool when things go against them is crazy.
And so often.
And it's every single game. That's why I said, I was like, I didn't think.
It's like the opposite of what Liverpool is.
Yeah.
Liverpool's like, okay, 4-0 down, don't worry about it. Like, we're Liverpool.
Istanbul, Barcelona. There's so many examples of it. And I said going into that West Ham game, I was like, I don't think Arne Slot survives this week. They went and beat West Ham, but I was like, Leeds and Sunderland, I think, are two games that you will not, they're almost like nightmare territory, I think, for Slot a little bit, in terms of those two sides are everything that Liverpool aren't at the moment, in terms of the collective, the work rate, and also Sunderland especially have got the quality to actually hurt you if you're
nearly did, didn't they?
Nearly did, yeah. And if it wasn't, that's the ironic thing as well. If it wasn't for Chiesa, who can't seem to get a game in all of this, even though Salah has been booted out the side. If you're him, what are you thinking? Like, you've been sat on the bench. I know you weren't signed for loads and loads of money. It was only 15 million quid or whatever it was last summer. But every time he has an opportunity, he grabs it and doesn't get rewarded.
And this is what I meant about the manager, like, because I saw this last season when they were walking the Champions League group stages and beating teams like 4-5. I'm like, you're still, like, for me that would be like, this is the opportunity to bed in some of the youngsters, giving them some debuts and stuff. And I was just like, you're still bringing on like your first team players in games that you don't need to, and then you decide in the last group game when you could go undefeated, right? Let's just chuck the kids out there, send them away to PSV and get beat. So. And I just,
You're seeing mistakes. You're seeing a lot of
I
mistakes.
see a lot of mistakes, and I think if telling that the captain of the club isn't necessarily backing the manager when they're probably supposed to have the closest contact, that I won't say he's lost the dressing room, but you could lose enough characters in the dressing room to affect the whole situation.
Brighton's a horrible game to have next as well. It's just not. It's not ideal.
It's not
Bournemouth
good
after that as well. He's talking about fear of like
Intensity
energy and stuff. Yeah, exactly. So I guess final question is: how will this play out for you? And do you think can this be a blessing in disguise either for Slot or for Liverpool?
I think that's so hard to answer on Slot because I think in some circumstances you'd say that maybe the dressing room will kind of galvanise around that. Maybe a manager of a slightly stronger character would be able to kind of regroup everyone and say, look, if there's one player that's there that's not playing for the collective, I know you guys are, I can count on you, let's kind of turn this around. But like with what you were saying earlier, I feel like he's maybe lost more elements of the dressing room than just Salah, but they maybe haven't been as explosive in the way that they've conducted themselves. So I honestly don't know. I really don't know. Tonight I think will be
Do you
really...
think he's close, Slot? Do you think he's close to the elbow? Yeah.
I'd say so because now it's a very big gamble by Salah, but he's put the man between a rock and a hard place because it's either the club say, right, we'll adhere to you, Salah's gone, and we'll give you time to figure it out. Then he will be under pressure for letting basically one of the greatest players to ever play for the club go and causing that.
I think there needs to be. Sorry, I can't finish.
And then the other side of it is the club say, well, make amends and let's bring him back into the fold and find out how we do that. Then you lose like any leverage you've had over the rest of the squad because everyone's going to start kicking up fusses and
because like from here you go. Liverpool have to make the higher ups. I guess they have to make a decision of going. Let's make a call now and go. Look, Salah's done because he's got AFCON and you've got January transfer window and you got the rest of December. Go. If you can get 40 million for us or whatever it is, or even there might even just a handshake here, right? Like, and we can get this sorted, then it's done. What could be really weird is if you get to the end of AFCON and end of January, and there's two scenarios. Either something's happened with Slot's gone, as a new guy's come in. Does the new guy go, come here, Mo? Yeah. And try and see the game in a different way, see the team in a different way, see a different casualty as opposed to Salah.
Also bring the fans back together as well, because the fans have sided with, although they don't necessarily agree with what Salah's done, they're going to side with him, aren't they?
But this?
What, if Slot's gone?
What now? I think anyway. Like,
I feel like from what I'm seeing and hearing, I feel like most people are going Salah, you silly Billy.
I feel like, no, they are. But I also feel like if push came to shove, a lot of the Liverpool fans I've been seeing online have been like, yes, what he's done is wrong, and I really don't like the way he's gone about it. But if push comes to shove, I'm going to back Salah over Slot. That's the sentiment.
Or they'd rather see Slot go and keep Salah.
Yeah,
right.
But that's what I gather. I don't know. Like,
I know we keep talking about AFCON in terms of him going. I don't think Slot's got as much time in terms of him being at AFCON as he thinks because Egypt aren't that good, so they might be back in a week or two.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's the other scenario, isn't it? Because there is there is the respite of like, you know, it's like having a fight on the last day of school, but you've got the whole summer holidays to kind of let that go or fester, and then we're gonna have to deal with it on the other side. But you are gonna have to deal with it on the other side. So if Slot and Salah are both like having to come back together, what you don't want is it not being kind of resolved and him being like on the bench bit part, because it festers like the Ronaldo thing did between, you know, from January all the way to May. I don't think you want that.
No, I think they're quite lucky that Ghana didn't qualify for AFCON, because I feel like they might go and look at Semenyo in the first couple of weeks of January before that release clause expires and kind of go, we're going to bring in someone that has got quality, can finish, runs, works hard for the team, and kind of like, well, by the time Salah may or may not come back, it's like we've kind of almost not dealt with the problem, but it feels like an obvious one for them to go and do, whether it's just to like replace Gakpo at left wing, or like he can play on the right and then reshift the dynamic of the team again.
I feel like adding more players is the last thing that Arne Slot needs to be doing.
But they will. I think that I feel like they will. I don't.
No, they will. But I just look at Arne Slot and I say, you know, they got him from, was it Feyenoord, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think, like, you look at the squad like, at Feyenoord, you've never had superstars. Liverpool's the first place you've gone, and you've probably had superstar egos that surpass yourself, and you've had to deal with that, and you got through the Trent stuff. and you signed a bunch of more superstars, and it's clearly not working, and you're going to add more players in January.
And ignored the one position that you probably needed more than anybody else.
Centre
It was
back.
a centre-back, it's just...
So you're one of the top guys at Liverpool. I'd like you to make a decision. What would you do?
Slot goes.
Slot goes.
Because if I'm going to build the Galacticos, I need someone that can handle the Galacticos. Like,
Yeah.
Okay.
But then if you go and get, I don't know, if Xabi
Is that Alonso?
Well, that's the thing.
Ripple effect.
Maybe he's shown that he can't... I think what the treatment of Xabi Alonso at Real Madrid is typical Real Madrid, and it's very harsh, and the media build-up and all that kind of stuff. But would Liverpool take that gamble if they feel like it's someone that can't manage those kind of profiles, if you believe what you read, which I feel like is a load of guff a lot of the time.
I think
it's a
sometimes-
different level, though. Like, Real Madrid is a different kettle of fish in terms of...
The
Like,
lifestyle
even
of it,
last
I don't
season, it was the whole argument, like, should Mbappe be a striker or a left wing and all this stuff. Like, I think at Liverpool, there's enough set positions, or he could make enough tweaks to make everyone happy in terms of the squad. And then you look at one of your marquee signings is Florian Wirtz, and that's his guy. So if you can unlock him, a lot of people are happy because he's a very giving player.
Yeah, he's a facilitator, isn't he? Yeah.
Alonso, like, the thing with... You take Alonso, and please don't get offended by this, people, but like, I think Alonso at Real Madrid is like the one club where he's not bigger than the club.
Yeah.
Not bigger than the club, but like the biggest star. I think if he goes to Liverpool, even though you spent a lot of money and got a lot of superstars, they're young superstars that would go, teach me, Alonso. Like he would have, I think he would have that aura at Liverpool that could really, because you'd get wholehearted buy-in, I think. And that is always the problem with Real Madrid, is they have so much talent, but sometimes it feels like the sort of work rate isn't there because they're not luxury players, but like they have,
and the connection between the fans and the players isn't as important because the way they view football is so much more like transactional. It feels like it's just win for me. Like, we don't really care. Whereas like Liverpool and in the Premier League generally, like that is really important. Like that collective.
You know, it's funny though, like with Real Madrid managers, why they like we're in December and they're talking about sacking, because really and truly all that matters to them is what happens in May. So like there's a reality in which Real Madrid get through the qualification phase, they could still win La Liga, they could leave with a double or a treble. Do they really care what happens in November at that point in time? So I wanted to see Xabi Alonso at Liverpool before he went to Real Madrid. I thought that would be a good fit, and he could have, to be fair, the same players that they brought over, Wirtz, Frimpong, like, I wanted to see them play.
I mean, that's why it works. That obviously works brilliantly as well, right? I think like perfect world. I think you go, Xabi, do you fancy it?
Yeah,
and I think you could resolve that, and then that probably gives you an element of breathing space with the Salah situation. That is the thing. That's always interesting, was that the manager is so much more disposable than when you've got like you can't get rid of, or it's harder to get rid of a lot of those players. So the one thing you can change is the manager. Yeah. So but he's done, the credit in the bank is. That's what is saving him. If he not won the league last year, he's gone.
He's gone, 100%. Yeah. I think that's the only reason why some Liverpool fans are holding on. That is literally the only credit in the bank.
Can you not look at like context? Like, you can win a league and not necessarily be the right man for the job. And I say that because the reality is Salah had arguably statistically anyway, one of the greatest individual seasons of all time.
Yeah. Should the same level of
that output.
Yeah.
And your team, this is your team now. So, and I think the turning point was the day they basically confirmed and won the league and showed up to Stamford Bridge, like hungover from whatever party they were doing. And I said, that's the mentality. You talk about like
I think
Alex Ferguson when he used to say the day after they win the league is a blank slate, like act like it never happened.
Yeah, new season.
And
starts,
it's just like the standards dropped before the season had even finished.
Arnie slotted in Ibiza.
Yeah,
and I'm not against it. Go celebrate it, but you have to back it up the next year. And I'm looking at saying the standards dropped at that point,
and that's right. For the judgment that's been put upon Salah of like dropping because you can, maybe Slot has to have the same critique. Like, I'd never thought about that.
But I don't think I felt that way about Slot before Salah said any of this, so I didn't want to. I don't want to pile on to him, but
he's got to find something quick.
And Salah needs to be more specific as well, because when you talk about being thrown under the bus and all this stuff, like you're leaving it too open to what are the promises that you were made.
I don't think he's got the specifics.
No.
I think it's just his ego's so bruised, and he's thinking, hang on understandably, like I said at the start, like he's like, hang on a minute, I've like been carrying this lot for like 5 years in his head, and I think there's Carragher, like I get what he's saying, but Salah has been, the guy, like the output's been insane for a really long time, so it is short-term memory. He will feel from everyone else.
But,
But like, stop posting on Instagram.
it's a structure that served to suit him, and he no longer
Yeah, he
services
was
it the same way.
he was the final piece of the puzzle. Well, he's obviously been there for a long time, but like everything, like we said earlier, was geared up for him to score goals. He was the finisher. Like he's,
Which is why the last thing I have to harp on this because it's near and dear to my heart. But that's why I love the AFCON comment. Everyone ever says like, "Why did he say that?" I'm like, because if you've ever watched Salah at AFCON, like you wouldn't think that's the Salah in the Premier League. Like he's genuinely horrible at AFCON, and
He just stands up there on his own, doesn't he? But they can't get the ball to him either because it's not good enough.
No, do you know?
Well, their record before Salah sort of hit his prime was actually quite good at AFCON, wasn't it?
They're the most successful.
Yeah, he's never won it, so
he's never won, and he's never had a good tournament. So it's just like from the British lens, when everyone's like, he's probably the greatest African player of all time because of everything he's done in the Premier League. Africans like myself will turn around and say no, because when you go to your own tournament, you just look bang average.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot of players that have done nothing like Wayne Rooney did nothing. Apart from 2004.
But it's held against them, though.
Yeah, it's massively held.
Not hugely though.
It's massively held against Kane.
You would not give him you would not give him a contract though.
No,
based on
but
that.
I would say that there's a way to gauge how much your impact is individually. So like Ronaldo, for example, for Portugal, like the proof's in the pudding. Like we can say Portugal are a good side, but I don't think they've ever been like the best side in Europe.
No.
But he's managed in whatever capacity to help them win trophies along the way, whatever we think of.
Managing on the touchline and
managing on the touchline and all that stuff. But it's still, for me, the mark of what you can do for your nation. Does like I hold that dearly as well, because that's what makes you an actual icon as well.
I think he's panicking.
Yeah,
I think he's panicking.
Yeah,
and I think when you're at the top, there's just because you're good at football doesn't mean you're mature.
No,
I've seen it a million times.
Yeah.
And I think that's he's realizing he's mortal.